Welcome to the next installment of YouTube. Today we are very fortunate to have Alison, who is actually a rep from Agra Pet Insurance, and also she has got a unique position of being a trustee not in one but two animal charities of Animal in Distress and also of St. Giles Animal Rescue. And today she's here to provide an insight of both industries and how they both are actually related but not exactly related, and they're connected to each other, and more importantly about her passion for why she's doing this and her love for animals, in which she just takes on not just one but two different roles in two separate animal organizations in terms of what they do and what they provide. So without further ado, let's welcome Alison.
Thank you. As Lennon said, I'm Alison. I work for a company called Agra Pet Insurance as a business development manager. But aside to that, I'm a trustee, as Lennon said, for two animal charities, one based in Ippleben, Animals in Distress, and one based in Taunton, St. Giles Animal Rescue.
Alison, would you mind telling us more about your involvement in the animal charities? How long have you been there, and what exactly is your role, and what do you do over there?
Okay, I joined Animals in Distress about 18 months ago, based on the fact that I knew of the charity. They're about 25 years old, which is quite a long established charity in the area for animals. I'd had animals from them historically, and I thought I could perhaps add some value, and was invited to become a trustee, which I thought would be a fantastic opportunity to be able to give something back and certainly support the charity further, other than the usual fundraising or rehoming an animal. So I was very fortunate to be asked to be a trustee, which, as I said, I joined 18 months ago. The role is very varied. It's protecting the charity and making sure the right things are done for the charity. That can be from the animal side of things, the protection of the animals that are coming in, the animals that are going out, to make sure that they're going to the right people. And also the fundraising side, to make sure we have enough income. Obviously we are sort of self-supporting, so we have to look at all streams of revenue to bring in to make sure that the actual charity runs and can continue to run as it is, both now and for the future.
Okay, and so as a role of a trustee, how often do you guys meet up?
We tend to meet once every 3 months. In actual fact, we had a meeting yesterday. They tend to sort of run for about 4 hours, which can be quite lengthy. Sort of till about 10:30, 11 o'clock of an evening, where we can still be working. But at that time, we bring to the table lots of different subjects. There is an agenda we work to. We work through the agenda with any issues that might be for staffing, fundraising ideas, things that are generally going on for the charity, any issues that we might have, because also we have the charity shops as well, so all that retail side needs to be taken into account. How we sort of monitor that, and also how we look to expand and sort of future-proof ourselves as well.
Okay, I think another question that we've been asked quite often is what exactly happens to an animal when it's being brought to you? What are the most common reasons? And when it's in your care, what exactly happens before it gets rehomed again? And usually how long will it take for that process?
It's a very good question. Particularly we see animals from all different walks of life coming into the centre. That could be death of an owner. It could be an animal that's surrendered because they can't afford to keep the animal. It could be an animal that's maybe become ill, had an accident, and they can't afford the treatment. It could be that someone's moving house and they can't take them with, the animal can't be taken with them. So there are lots of different reasons why somebody would surrender an animal, which, we see all sorts of different things coming through. The most common one, which could be prevented, is going to be the one that an illness or an injury, because usually that's the major one that causes the most trouble, because it's the affordability. When an animal comes in, we have to make sure that we have room. So sometimes we'll have a waiting list where people will ring and they say that we have to surrender our animal, and we will, at that time, if we can take them. If not, they may be put on a waiting list until such a time we can actually have room to take them in. They'll be checked out by a vet. they'll have vaccinations, they'll be neutered if they need to be neutered, and obviously any treatment that needs to be carried out if they have been brought in because they are ill or subsequently they've had an accident. The actual time process can be quite a few weeks. So from an animal coming in to actually being rehomed, depending on the breed, if it's a popular breed, it could be rehomed quite quickly. If it's a less popular breed, it might be with us for weeks, months, or sometimes can be over a year.
And sorry, what are the more popular breeds that you get?
Tend to be the more sort of smaller breeds, the more trendy ones, the pugs, the small toy dogs tends to be the most popular. The ones that are less popular always traditionally have been Staffordshire Bull Terriers, which still is the case, but less so because the sort of press around them is sort of changing a little bit. We're seeing that they won most popular dog of a programme recently, so that's slightly changing, but we are seeing still quite a lot of those coming in.
And what's the sort of, let's say for a 20 kilo or 15 kilo dog, what's the average sort of cost involved from being in your care until it gets rehomed?
Gosh, that's a really difficult question because depending on the length of time and the treatment involved for vaccinations, neutering, any other treatments, you might be saying sort of £500, £600, £700 plus. Depending on what their treatment they need, they may need a scan, operations. There's obviously all those sorts of things that we have to incur the cost of. If we have a particular animal that's with us that may need a lot of treatment, we might run a campaign to help fund that actual treatment itself, which we'll put on our Facebook and actually sort of advertise to say, can you help us out with some extra funds coming in? So it's a very difficult question to answer. It can run into the hundreds, if not thousands.
Okay, and I understand there's also an adoption fee that the new family actually pays when they get when they find the dog of their choice and they take it off yourself. How much is the adoption fee like that? Does it reflect in the cost that has been put in for each individual animal?
To my mind, it's very cheap because it doesn't really cover very much. When you think about the kenneling, the food, the treatment, exercising, we have to pay staff to look after them. So there's lots of costs involved. And the rehoming fee of around about £195 is, to my mind, isn't enough. It is a suggested donation amount, which people can give more, and we would like to encourage people to give more if they can afford it. Similar to the animals that are brought into us that are surrendered, we would like them to actually give a donation at that time, if possible, because we're helping to find a new home for that animal, which sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't.
That sounds like quite a bargain, really. Less than £200, you have a dog that's been well cared for and potentially medical issues resolved that could have caused easily thousands of pounds and things like that.
Yes, absolutely.
How does the charity fund that deficit?
Fundraising, donations, we run events, legacies. We look at all avenues. We have a fundraising team. We're looking to try and expand our fundraising team because we need to move with the times, otherwise we won't survive. We need more sponsors, we need corporate sponsors. We need to look at the bigger picture and maintaining what we can actually achieve income-wise, because the expense of actually running the centre is quite high. And we need to make sure that those daily minimum requirements are covered, plus extra to obviously expand and grow the charity.
You're talking about a sort of a big vision. So I mean, Animal Distress has been around for 25 years, and I know they've got great kenneling and cattery facilities, and you're in the middle of upgrading your kenneling facilities as well to make it future-proof, so to speak. Correct. And making sure that they're all kept quite well. What sort of plans how do you see the charity, or how does the Board of Trustees see the charity in, say, about 5 years' time or 10 years' time?
Ultimately, we have a programme of events which is covering the next 5 years. We have a programme running at the moment for our next kennel build, which the funds for that, I think the build costs and everything is somewhere in the region of £1 million. So that's a huge challenge for us to raise that money. To make sure we are future-proofed. And we know it's not going to be instantaneous, it's going to take time, and that's why we brought in fundraisers to actually concentrate on the actual fundraising for that particular project.
Oh, that sounds like quite a daunting challenge, and I do wish you all the best in that.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about your other charity, St. Giles.
St Giles is a much smaller charity. That's based up in Rantage, just outside of Taunton. It's a charity that I've been involved in from when it was first launched, probably about 10 years ago. And it's grown very gradually over the last 10 years to where it is now. I recently joined as a trustee because of my connection with the charity over that period of time. Like I say, it's a much smaller charity, and it is heavily subsidised by St Giles Kennels. So the actual rehoming is supported dramatically by the kennels, the boarding kennels. They have a vet's practice on site. There's lots of elements to the centre which they are phenomenal in what they're doing and the work they're doing, and they are particularly renowned for taking in the puppy farm dogs from across the region and also up into Wales and other parts of the country. So they've done a fabulous job at actually rehabilitating those puppy farm dogs and actually rehoming them.
Okay, sounds another formidable charity as well, and I can see
much
that.
Smaller, but yeah, and much less recognised. Yeah,
I can certainly see your passion for that, such that you not only joined one but two charities. So well done you. Let's talk about your other job, your insurance company at Agra Pet Insurance. So what's your role inside there, and what have you learned from there, and how long have you been inside there? Just tell us a bit more about it.
I've been with Agra Pet Insurance for coming up for 12 months. It's a new role for me. I was made redundant from my previous job of 12 years, and I decided I would like to do something a bit different. Something animal orientated, something animal related, because that was my passion and that's what I wanted to get involved in. And animal insurance was something that I didn't really know an awful lot about, but was quite interested in sort of scratching the surface and getting underneath the skin of it to understand it, to see the merits of it, what types of policies are out there. And actually it's a complete and utter minefield, and for the consumer to find a policy that's right for them is very daunting. When I did my research before I joined Agria, I discovered that really the best policy to have is a lifetime policy. Yes, it's more expensive, but on the flip side, you get what you pay for. And as I said before, for the charity side, we see so many animals surrendered because of illness or injury because they can't afford the treatment. A lifetime policy is invaluable to offer the cover for those types of animals that become ill or are injured. So my role is looking after the vet connections that we have across the region from the south of the UK. And we offer a very nice, simple product which actually gives people the opportunity to try before they buy. It's a 5 weeks free policy for a puppy or a kitten up to the age of 18 months old. And it just gives them a little bit of breathing space while they're looking around to decide what sort of policy that they're looking to have. We can convert those 5 weeks free into a full policy if they wish to do so, and we will discuss all of their options. But we only do lifetime because we recognise lifetime is the best way to go.
One question that a lot of owners they're quite resistant in having policies taken, or even thinking about insurance, is they would say that it wasn't something that their parents did, or it wasn't something that they did sort of 10 years ago, or it's not something that they've not done for all these years, and the last pet didn't really have a problem, so they see it as a waste of money to just paying the premium. What would you say to those people?
That is a common problem that we do see, but 10, 20, 30 years ago we didn't have the actual advancement in science that we have today for treatment. We've sort of mirrored almost what human medicine has done. We're now replicating that for animals as well. So whereas 10, 20 years ago there was no treatment available for an animal that might have become ill, and there was no option. So there was less choice. Now, because there are more choices, there are treatments available, there may be something that can be done to help save an animal. That would then be covered by the insurance. So there are very much, the merits are actually now having insurance because treatments are available that can actually help treat your pet, and they can go on and survive and live a healthy life.
Another comment that they make is the pet insurance, the premium is more expensive than the car insurance or the house insurance, and so I sort of can see where they're coming from, and what would you say to that?
It's a very common thing that we have, but what we tend to do is we tend to look at the breed, the age, the postcode of where the pet is. We'll take all those factors into account. Anything, obviously we can't include anything that's pre-existing. But what we don't do is like other insurance companies do, and particularly if you take car insurance, we don't penalise somebody for claiming for the previous year. We don't do that. That's not something we do. So the premiums are not loaded if a person actually claims on their policy. What we do every year when we come up for renewal is we take into account veterinary inflation, again the age and the postcode of the animal. So those factors are all taken into account, and it is very much reflective of what is actually the current position for pet insurance. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive because it is a lifetime policy and you're covering your pet for a lifetime. So it's not a policy that's you're cheap and cheerful from another provider that doesn't really cover you for what you really need it for, and you don't know that until you claim. A lifetime policy is always the way to go.
Okay, and I suppose from a point of view, I suppose it is, you can't really compare car insurance and house insurance with pet insurance, because usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, for car insurance and house insurance, you don't plan to claim for it, and you hardly ever claim, which is why they can make the premium so low, because you hardly ever make a claim. Whereas for pet insurance, you're almost definite that at some point of time in the pet's life, something is going to go wrong, and you're going to make a claim. That's why the big difference of premium is, isn't it? Because
every animal I have owned, I would be claiming on my pet insurance, because I have every animal over the last 10 years, which have been 14 of them, has had some issues or problems that I would claim on my pet insurance for.
Yeah, good. I suppose another big thing is that as a vet, we find that by the time we see the animals and we talk about insurance, it's almost a little bit too late. So they've either not gotten it insured, and I'm now treating a condition that they cannot get insured on, or they have gotten a policy that is not suitable for them, because they find that when we actually make a claim, that they can't actually make a claim, or it's just not sufficient, and they took it just because it was they found it on Google, that was the cheapest insurance to go for, or it was part of their bigger thing like Sainsbury's insurance or things like that. Nothing against them at all, but that's how they usually pick insurance. And the frustration that we get is that by the time we want to give an advice, or they ask us for advice, it's a bit too late. What would be your advice on how do people find the right insurance for them in general? Who should they go to? Because everybody goes to Google, but who should they really go to, really?
The first port of call should always be their vet. They're the ones that know, they're the ones that are on the coalface. They know, they see what they see that's coming in on a daily basis. You know what you see, you know what level of treatments that are out there, you see what is the most common things that you're treating, and yet they don't seem to realise that you're the best person to be asking. What we try and do is educate the pet owners from a very young age. So a puppy or a kitten, we try and get them first of all to educate them, and that's why we give them the 5 weeks free, to give them the breathing space so they can actually speak to you, get your advice on what you think they should be doing. And I don't know any other vet that wouldn't recommend a lifetime policy. Yes, there are comparison sites out there, but not everybody is on a comparison site. You have to pay to be on a comparison site, so people choose not to be on there. So it doesn't mean because you've gone onto a comparison site you've got the best deal, because you're not comparing like for like.
Thank you very much for that. It sounds as though you are in a very, very unique position whereby you are working for a huge corporate like pet insurance, but you're also dedicating quite a lot of time into your smaller, organizations like your charities and things like that. But it does place you in a very unique position. So what's your perspective of the relation between these two industries? How do they actually mutually help each other, or do they have a conflict of interest, and how do they complement each other in your thinking?
Well, we work with rescue centres, and we provide insurance for those rescue centres as well. So we do try and work with them to educate people that actually, yes, this is a rescued animal, for whatever reason it's been surrendered. It may have been because they have had an illness or injury, and that's why they've been surrendered. So let's not let that happen again to this poor individual, because if you take out insurance, again, you're going to protect yourself going forward. So there is a correlation between working together with the rescue centres, because we don't want to see animals coming back into the rescue centres if we can offer something that actually gives them some protection.
So it's even as though you're having a rescue centre whereby you're taking animals to rehome them, your ultimate aim is actually to rescue the ones with the right reasons rather than lack of funding or things like that, because it's always good to keep the animal with the original owner, because a lot of changing of homes,
absolutely,
does that do anything to the animal?
It's very stressful for an animal to change homes because they don't know what's going on. It's sometimes very difficult because if there's a death of an owner, that's very difficult, and that can't be helped. But for an animal that's been passed from pillar to post because they can't take them for whatever reason to a new home, or there's a divorce, or the animal's had an accident or they've become ill, it's not a time for them to be chopping and changing homes. They really ought to be staying where they are. And if they've got insurance, if there's insurance there, then they're going to have the best of both worlds. They're going to stay where they are with their owner that they know, and they're going to have the treatment they need.
It sounds as though obviously you are quite a huge advocate of pet insurance and thinking that's probably the best thing for the animal. So just to let our audience know, currently what is information on what's the proportion of insured pets in UK? Is it high? Is it low? Are we going in the right direction or not really? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
We're trying to educate people into making sure that their pets are insured. I think in the UK there's roughly around about 25% of pets are insured, which is nowhere near enough. If you take a country like Sweden, you're around about the 90% mark of their pets are insured, which is phenomenal, and that's ultimately what we would like to see in the UK. Interesting, in Sweden, the most commonly insured animal is cats, which that wouldn't be the case in the UK. It's far less cats are insured than dogs. But it's an education process, and that's ultimately what we would like to do from every avenue, any avenue that I come into contact with, be it the rescue centre or through my daily contact with the vet industry, is an education process that people really need to have insurance, because it's an awful situation to put yourself in if there's an illness or an injury and you don't have the funds to pay for that treatment. It's a horrible conversation that you're having to have. It's nice to be able to take that out of the equation and say, yes, let's treat my animal. Yes, I've got insurance. Let's do it.
The results on Sweden is extremely interesting and astonishing, actually. From your experience, why do you think that's the case? How did Sweden manage such a high take-on rate for pet insurance? Do they have less pets there, or are the people more educated? If so, how have they been educated such that they actually get a 90% insured rate? That is pretty amazing.
It is an amazing fact that they are so high in Sweden, but they've had insurance around in Sweden for a very long time. In actual fact, Agria came from Sweden, and the first insurance that they took out was for a horse in 1890. So they've had insurance around for a very long time, and they insured their first dog in 1924. So they have always had a history of insurance, and they've all grown up with insurance from a very long time ago, and that's obviously where we would like to eventually end up in the UK.
And if, say, yourself or Agra had a magic wand, okay, where would you think the education starts? Where would you incorporate that into it, and how would you do so? Like how is Sweden doing it to achieve? I know they've been around for quite some time, but 90% is still pretty impressive. So how do you do it? It's
an education process, really, and I think personally it comes from childhood, so schools, education, universities. Anybody that has a family pet, there's so many avenues you can go down for an education process, and also it's tidying up the insurance industry. There are so many policies out there. There needs to be some sort of clean-up of what's out there and what people are offering, and it needs to be more explicit as to what they're actually getting for their money, because people are very misinformed and they think they have something that they don't. So it's very much an education process.
Okay, so it just sounds like there's more and more education, so the more we can get the word out there, the better it is. It's because we know people in the UK, they are crazy about the animals, but for whatever reason, there's some block that is stopping them from getting it properly insured, so that when something happens, it's almost as though that they feel nothing is going to happen to the animal.
Yes.
And that is a very fascinating mindset. I'm not sure how that came about, so to speak, but we find that quite a lot, really. That some people would say that, I had my last pet insured for 17 years and nothing happened, so I felt it was a waste of money. So this time when I get a pet, I don't get it insured. Right. And usually it's the people who actually need insurance now. When they get the next pet, they will get it insured. So it is It is very interesting.
It's interesting and very difficult. Funnily enough, we had an age amnesty for December and January, whereby we would quote on any age cat or dog, and the amount of people that actually called in that wanted to take out insurance was quite high. So it just proves that actually people are starting to think, yes, I know my pet's a bit older, but actually we need insurance. So the education is starting, but it needs to be ramped up.
That is very fascinating. Thank you very much for that. And so Alison, you've also been frequenting Amity Vets over here for a few months now.
Yes.
And you're certainly one of our valued clients. May I just ask, with all your experience in animal charity and also with your experience in pet insurance, there's so many other vets around. Why did you pick us? What made you pick us? And how have you felt since joining us?
It was quite easy, really, because you're very different in your approach. You don't have a reception area. It's very relaxed. It's not clinical when you come in. And I really liked how relaxed everything was. And bringing my dog in for the first time, he wasn't as stressed as he would have normally have been. It wasn't clinically white. And everybody is much more attentive. And I'm not disrespecting anybody else, but it was completely different coming here. You have one person that's dedicated to look after you, and you can always speak to that person, so they know about you, they know who you are, they know what pets you've got. So it was a very different approach as opposed to somebody that didn't really know me, who hasn't seen me before, but it's a totally different experience.
And thanks for that. And just want to ask, as a pet owner, what would be, in your mind, just personally, 3 most important things that you want for your vet practice?
That's a good question. Somebody that cares, somebody that I can talk to if I need to, and thirdly, and probably the most commonly for a lot of people, is price. Okay. That's obviously a factor. Whether you're insured or not insured, price does come into it.
Sure. And speaking of price as well, are we talking about are you looking for the absolute price itself, or are you looking for sort of value?
Value, very much so, because price, it can be analysed in lots of different ways, but nobody goes and does all their shopping in the cheapest place. So you get what you pay for, and it's very much value for money.
Thank you very much, Alison. And with this, we will wrap up. You have given us a lot of information, and for anybody who wants to find out more information for animal distress, certainly we will provide them with the links to it, and also with any sort of pet insurance or anything else. We'll also provide a link to that. Thank you very much for a valuable time.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.